Everybody Loves Raymond, a sitcom that once felt immortal. But it was the very actors most beloved by fans, who one by one endured tragedy and quietly disappeared. Stroke, depression, suicide, illness. This is the untold dark side of the faces behind Everybody Loves Raymond, and the tragic deaths that took them away from us forever. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Let's go. Sawyer Sweeten as Jeffrey Barone. In Everybody Loves Raymond, Jeffrey Barone was always the gentle, shy child, and the perfect half of the most adorable twin duo on television. When the show premiered in 1996, Sawyer Sweeten was only 1 year old, and from then on, he grew up before the eyes of all of America over the course of 9 seasons. Born on May 12, 1995 in Brownwood, Texas, Sawyer and his siblings moved to California to join the cast. Life seemed like a dream bathed in stage lights. But that dream only lasted until 2005, when the series ended. At that time, Sawyer was just 10 years old, but the silence that followed the final applause weighed heavier than any role he had ever played. No more lines, no more studio, no more Jeffrey. Only Sawyer remained, alone, withdrawn from showbiz, quietly living with his twin brother in a house in Riverside. The echoes of fame were too loud, leaving him lost between two worlds, a glorious past and an eerily quiet present. People still called him the cute boy from Raymond, but no one saw he was struggling in the depths of depression. On April 23, 2015, just 3 weeks before his 20th birthday, Sawyer took his own life with a gun in his home. The news sent shockwaves through all of Hollywood. Former co-stars like Romano, Garrett, and Patricia Heaton mourned him with deep emotion. At the time of his death, Sawyer's estimated net worth was around $2 million, but no number could ever measure such a loss. And the image that brings tears to every eye? An old frame. Jeffrey standing in the living room, hugging his teddy bear tightly, with a soft smile, the smile that once made millions of viewers happy, but couldn't save him. Doris Roberts as Marie Barone. Every time Marie Barone appeared on screen, audiences held their breath. What would she say today to drive Deborah crazy? In Everybody Loves Raymond, the legendary mother-in-law showed up with razor-sharp eyes, flawless one-liners, and a love so smothering for her son. When the show aired in 1996, Doris Roberts was already 71 years old, and she didn't just play Marie, she became her. Doris May Roberts was born on November 4, 1925 in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up abandoned by her father. He disappeared without a word, leaving little Doris with her mother and grandparents in the Bronx, New York. Her father's absence left a chilling void in her childhood, a fracture she always tried to fill with art and a longing for love. She thought she had found a home with her husband Michael Kanata in 1956, but the marriage quickly fell apart. In 1962, she became a single mother, juggling work and motherhood, always having to stay strong while broken inside. A light at the end of the tunnel seemed to arrive when she met writer William Goyen, a man who loved her with the heart of an artist. But life struck another cruel blow. Goyen was diagnosed with leukemia and died in her arms in 1983. With no one left to lean on, Doris poured all her emotions into the stage, turning pain into art. It was the role of Marie Barone that saved her. The character pulled her out of darkness, earning her 4 Emmy Awards and the love of millions of fans. But behind the scenes, Doris quietly battled chronic pulmonary hypertension. Every breath was a struggle. Doris Roberts took her last breath on April 17, 2016, at the age of 90. She left behind an estimated net worth of $14 million. At the memorial held at the Ambassador Theater, the lights dimmed as the image of Marie Barone appeared one final time. That same sharp smile, but this time, it was to say goodbye. Peter Boyle, as Frank Barone. With his signature grumbling voice and jabs that hit like a hammer, Frank Barone, the cranky father who ranks among the most eccentric in sitcom history, walked into viewers' hearts with a presence like no other. When Everybody Loves Raymond premiered in 1996, Peter Boyle was 61 years old. Through the role of Frank, he didn't just make people laugh, he made them think. Peter Boyle was born on October 18, 1935, in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and was raised in a strict Catholic environment. He spent his youth in a monastery, originally planning to become a priest. But one day, without any explanation, he left the monastery and began a wandering journey through Chicago's theater scene and eventually onto the silver screen. Just as his career was reaching its peak, tragedy struck. In 1990, a massive stroke left him paralyzed on one side and unable to speak. 6 long months passed in silence. Hollywood forgot about him, and he feared he would never act again. But with sheer willpower, Boyle made a comeback. In 1996, he won an Emmy for a guest role on The X-Files, a sweet victory after nearly being erased from the industry. But that wasn't the end. While filming Everybody Loves Raymond, he suffered a heart attack on set in 1999. The entire crew froze in shock. From that moment on, Boyle returned to his faith, preparing for a quiet battle with multiple myeloma and heart disease. On December 12, 2006, Peter Boyle took his last breath at a hospital in New York at the age of 71. His estimated net worth was $8 million, most of which was donated to a cancer research fund founded by his wife. The final image etched in fans' memories? A lonely Frank Barone on the sofa, eyes gazing into the distance, and in his murmured voice still echoed the sorrow of a man who nearly lost the ability to speak. Patricia Heaton as Deborah Barone. Deborah Barone always appeared with perfectly styled blonde hair, patient eyes, and an endless sigh caught between a clumsy husband and a storm-like mother-in-law. When Everybody Loves Raymond premiered in 1996, Patricia Heaton had just turned 38 years old. Through the role of Deborah, she didn't just make audiences laugh, she made them see themselves in her. Patricia was born on March 4, 1958, in Bay Village, Ohio. She grew up in a strict Catholic family, but tragedy came early. Her mother died suddenly from a brain aneurysm when Patricia was only 12 years old. That loss became a quiet wound that followed her throughout life, creating a deep longing for a complete family, something Deborah Barone would later crave too. Patricia's adulthood was a journey of searching for faith and identity. Her first marriage ended in divorce, pushing her into a spiritual desert, a place where she wrestled with doubt, pain, and a desperate thirst for love. When Everybody Loves Raymond reached its peak, no one knew that Patricia was battling alcoholism. Deborah's smile was real, but also a mask. Alcohol was how she soothed the emptiness behind the stage lights. But Patricia refused to stay broken forever. She got sober, publicly shared her journey, and inspired thousands of women silently suffering. Her time starring in The Middle, 2009 to 2018, became Patricia's rebirth. She slowed down, embraced motherhood, artistry, and a guiding role for others. In 2025, at 67 years old, Patricia Heaton still appears on television, but has chosen a more peaceful path, focusing on family and humanitarian projects. Her estimated net worth is about $40 million, a number that reflects not only a star, but a woman who once saved herself from the edge. Ray Romano as Ray Barone. Everyone laughed when Ray Barone fumbled between his mother, wife, and towering brother. But few knew that the man behind those laughs, Ray Romano, was fighting a battle no camera ever captured. In 1996, at 39 years old, Ray stepped into the role that would make television history. Everybody Loves Raymond. Ray was born on December 21, 1957, in Queens, New York. He was a boy who loved math but unexpectedly found his calling in comedy. He grew up in a large Italian-American family where humor was the only way to survive the loud debates. From stand-up stages in New York, Ray entered the world of television with a show based on his own life. But fame came too fast, too fiercely. As actor, writer, and producer all at once, Ray became the highest-paid sitcom actor of that time. The pressure to keep the show at the top of the ratings robbed him of sleep, drained him of energy, and plunged him into deep depression. Every time he made millions laugh, he was hiding tears backstage. The true tragedy struck in 2010. While filming Men of a Certain Age, Ray received devastating news. His wife, Anna, had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. He dropped everything to be by her side, through sleepless nights, hidden tears from their children, and whispered prayers. Fortunately, Anna made a full recovery. But something inside Ray changed forever. Now, at 67 years old, Ray Romano lives at a slower pace. He still acts and does voice work, but devotes most of his time to family. His estimated net worth exceeds $200 million, but the true value isn't in the number. It lies in the strength of a man who once broke down in silence and stood back up so the world could keep laughing with him. Sullivan Sweden as Michael Barone. The brown-haired boy with big round eyes, always seen next to his twin brother Jeffrey in the Barone living room. That was Michael, played by Sullivan Sweden starting in 1996 when he was just 1 year old. Over 9 seasons, he and his twin brother Sawyer grew up before the audience's eyes, bringing innocent laughter to Everybody Loves Raymond. Born on May 12, 1995, in Brownwood, Texas, Sullivan was destined for fame before he could even speak. But the stage lights faded quickly when the show ended in 2005. And then, true darkness fell on April 23, 2015, when Sawyer Sweden, his twin brother, best friend, and part of his soul, ended his own life at the age of 19. No role could have prepared Sullivan for that shock. From that moment, he became a twinless twin, a twin who no longer had his other half. Silence replaced the camera lights. The smile in old photographs now only brings sharp memories. No scandals, no red carpets. Just a young man trying to heal a wound so invisible it may never fully mend. Though he made small appearances in Frank McCluskey, C.I., 2002, and Casting, 2017, Sullivan chose to live a private life. He turned away from fame, living simply, occasionally taking part in quiet mental health advocacy, because he understands better than anyone the cost of silent suffering. In 2025, at 30 years old, Sullivan Sweden lives peacefully, far from Hollywood. His estimated net worth is about $2 million, a figure from a childhood no one imagined would become the opening chapter of a story never written forward. Fred Willard as Hank McDougal. Mr. Hank McDougal, the goofy, conservative, yet oddly charming father of Amy, didn't appear often in Everybody Loves Raymond, but every time he did, audiences remembered. When he joined the cast in 2003, Fred Willard was 68 years old, bringing with him not only an unusual charm, but also a hidden darkness few ever suspected. Fred was born on September 18, 1933, in Cleveland, Ohio. He had served in the military before finding his way to comedy. He became a scene stealer in every project he joined, from Best in Show to Modern Family, with a brand of humor that was both silly and sophisticated, uniquely his own. Behind the stage lights was a love that lasted 50 years. Fred and his wife, Mary Lovell, were once seen as a model of lasting devotion in Hollywood. But in the final years of their lives, Mary fell seriously ill. Fred stood quietly by her side, watching his life partner fade away. When Mary passed in 2018, he was no longer the same man. Behind the laughter now was a void no one could fill. Worse still was the scandal in 2012. Fred was arrested at an adult movie theater. Though never charged, the incident cost him his job at PBS and turned him into a tabloid punchline. Fred once said it was the most humiliating and painful moment of my life, a stain he could never erase, despite a lifetime dedicated to comedy and craft. Fred Willard passed away on May 15, 2020, at the age of 86. The cause was cardiac arrest, following a long battle with artery disease and a bone marrow disorder. His net worth at the time of death was approximately $10 million. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, final resting place of many Hollywood legends. The last photo that circulated online showed Fred smiling, eyes bright, holding up a fake trophy in a short skit, a farewell that was gentle and exactly his style. No trumpets, just a smile, and a little heartache. Katherine Helmond as Lois Whelan. In the Barone family kitchen, Lois Whelan, Deborah's mother, always appeared with calm grace, soft eyes, and a gentle voice. When Everybody Loves Raymond brought Katherine Helmond into the role in 2003, she was 67 years old. But make no mistake, this woman was a legend. From Soap to Who's the Boss, she had once made the world laugh with just a single raised eyebrow. Born on July 5, 1929 in Galveston, Texas, Katherine grew up during the Great Depression. She rose above poverty, stepped onto Broadway stages, entered Hollywood, and became one of the most iconic comedic faces of the 1980s. But behind the endless charm was a quiet loneliness, a haunting fear known as old age. Her one constant companion through it all was director David Christian, her husband and soulmate. They had been together since 1969, enduring all of life's storms. But then the quietest enemy appeared: Alzheimer's. Slowly, Katherine began to forget her lines, the names of her co-stars even, the roles that had defined her career. A stage legend, now lost in her own memories. She withdrew from the entertainment industry, saying goodbye to her role as Lizzie in Cars and stepping away from numerous other projects. Every day became a silent battle. Her husband was no longer a director, but the guardian of the final pieces of her memory. On February 23, 2019, Katherine Helmond passed away peacefully at her home in Los Angeles at the age of 89. Her estimated net worth was around $5 million. But her greatest legacy was a career that could never be replicated. And in her final days, it was said she still smiled when someone mentioned the name Mona, even if she no longer remembered why that name meant so much. Georgia Engel as Pat McDougal. Pat McDougal always seemed to step out of another world, where every word was gentle and every sorrow was hidden behind a soft smile. When Georgia Engel joined Everybody Loves Raymond as Amy's mother in 2003, she was 55 years old and brought with her a treasure trove of roles. But few knew she also carried a sadness no one could read. Georgia was born on July 28, 1948 in Washington, D.C. She had once enchanted America as Georgette, the sweet, slightly ditzy love interest on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. The role brought fame, affection, and a curse. She was typecast as the naive doll, to the point where no one dared to offer her deeper, more serious characters. Georgia never married, had no children, and devoted nearly her entire life to the stage and to her faith. A follower of Christian Science, a religious denomination that opposes modern medicine, she chose to live through spirit, prayer, and serenity. But as old age arrived, that faith became a double-edged sword. Though she appeared in Hot in Cleveland alongside Betty White and took on Broadway and touring productions like The Drowsy Chaperone, Georgia's health began to deteriorate. Family worried, colleagues urged her to seek treatment, but she refused them all. For Georgia, God was the only doctor she needed. On April 12, 2019, Georgia Engel passed away quietly at her home in Princeton, New Jersey, at the age of 70. There was no official diagnosis. No one knew what illness she had, and people could only wonder, had she accepted medical care, Would she still be alive? Her estimated net worth was around $8 million, a result of 6 decades of gentle, diligent dedication to her art and to a faith that may have ultimately claimed her life. Charles Durning as Father Hobley. Father Hobley, the Barone family priest, appeared like a ray of light amid the chaos of constant bickering. He was gentle, understanding, and always knew how to listen. But if you looked deeply into those eyes, you would see something more haunting than any sermon ever spoken. Because Charles Durning, who played him, was a soul that carried the darkness of war for the rest of his life. Born on February 28, 1923, in Highland Falls, New York, Durning wasn't always an actor. Before setting foot on a Broadway stage or a Hollywood set, he was a soldier, and not just any soldier. Durning fought at D-Day, survived the Battle of the Bulge, and was awarded the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts. But the cost was sleepless nights and nightmares that never faded. He once said, "There are dark corners in the soul you don't want anyone to touch, so I use acting to let them out." After the war, he turned to theater to survive, not to become famous, but to stay sane. Durning became a beloved actor, skilled in both comedy and drama, from Tootsie to Dog Day Afternoon. In Everybody Loves Raymond, he served as a spiritual anchor, because in real life, he understood what it meant to suffer and how to forgive. 2 marriages fell apart, leaving quiet wounds he rarely spoke of. But he never gave up. He spent the rest of his life as an advocate for veterans, giving voice to the soldiers who never got the chance to speak. On December 24, 2012, Christmas Eve, Charles Durning took his final breath at his Manhattan home at the age of 89. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery, among fellow soldiers, just as he had lived. His estimated net worth was around $5 million. But that figure can't measure one truth. Charles Durning was a man who carried both war and faith onto the stage, and left behind, forever, a priest who smiled gently while hiding a past no one dared to face. Robert Culp as Warren Whelan. Warren Whelan didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. In Everybody Loves Raymond, he was Deborah's father, a calm, thoughtful man who always appeared with a soft smile and understanding eyes. When he took on the role in 1996, Robert Culp was 66 years old, and he brought to the character the depth of a life marked by many quiet heartbreaks. Robert Martin Culp was born on August 16, 1930, in California. He grew up dreaming of becoming a comic book artist. But fate pulled him into film, where he shined in leading roles, most notably in I Spy alongside Bill Cosby. With his polished appearance, refined voice, and intelligent gaze, he was the kind of man audiences admired. But behind the spotlight was a weary soul. Robert married 5 times, and 4 of those ended in divorce. Each parting left scars, not loud, but lasting. He longed for a complete and lasting home, but love always seemed to slip away. Still, he tried to be a devoted father, especially to the children who followed him into the world of art. As Hollywood slowly forgot him, Robert didn't give up. He wrote scripts and dreamed of making a film based on Terry and the Pirates, a childhood character who had once inspired him. Time was no longer on his side, but his passion remained as steady as the day he first walked onto a set. On March 24, 2010, Robert Culp passed away suddenly from a heart attack while walking through Runyon Canyon Park in Los Angeles, a place he often visited for peace amid the city's noise. He was 79 years old. His estimated net worth at the time of death was $5 million. But the true legacy he left behind was greater than money. It was in the quiet roles he played, in a life spent chasing love, and never giving up hope. Brad Garrett as Robert Barone. Every time Robert Barone ducked through a doorway, audiences laughed. Tall, gloomy, always on the sidelines of life, Robert was the voice of the overlooked. In 1996, Brad Garrett took on the role of Robert at 36 years old, and over 9 seasons, he made all of America remember the forgotten older brother with a humor laced in very real sorrow. Brad Garrett was born on April 14, 1960, in Oxnard, California. He was already a renowned stand-up comic with a famously deep voice before entering the sitcom world. But behind the laughs was a complex past. Brad grew up in a not-so-harmonious family, and his adulthood was filled with nights lost in comedy, his way of escaping real emotions. Just as Everybody Loves Raymond hit its peak, Brad's personal life began to fall apart. His seemingly perfect marriage to Jill Diven ended after 7 years. A bitter public custody battle followed, leaving Brad with deep emotional wounds he rarely discussed. Few knew that Brad quietly battled alcohol addiction. Even as he won an Emmy for Raymond and transformed into comedy legend Jackie Gleason in the film Gleason, 2002, he was still a man trying to heal, trying to find peace as a father and as someone who had lost his way. Then came the cruelest blow, not from real life, but from his TV family. In 2015, Sawyer Sweden, the boy who once called him Uncle Robert on set, ended his life. Brad was shattered, calling Sawyer a second family, and from that point on, he was no longer the carefree comic he had once been. In 2025, at age 65, Brad Garrett still performs stand-up and runs Brad Garrett's Comedy Club in Las Vegas. His estimated net worth is $50 million, but what he truly holds on to are the scars, the laughter paid for in tears, and the compassion that Robert Barone never had. But Brad learned to embrace, after everything. Meline Sweden as Allie Barone. Meline Ann Michelle Sweden was born on June 27, 1991, in Brownwood, Texas, United States. When Everybody Loves Raymond aired in 1996, he was only 5 years old. As Allie Barone, the eldest daughter of Ray and Deborah, she and her twin brothers, Sawyer and Sullivan, became symbols of childhood on American television. Over 9 seasons, the sweet smiling girl grew up before millions of viewers, offering rare innocence amid adult conflicts. But one day, the studio lights went out. When the show ended in 2005, Meline walked off the set and into a void. Hollywood didn't know what to do with a grown-up Allie Barone. She was typecast, lost in endless failed auditions and a long silence. What hurt even more was watching her closest brother, Sawyer, slowly withdraw, grow quiet, and fade from the spotlight. On April 23, 2015, Medeline's world collapsed. Sawyer Sweden, the brother who had laughed, acted, and grown up alongside her, took his own life at just 19 years old. She didn't just lose a sibling, she lost part of her childhood. From then on, Meline turned her grief into purpose. She became a powerful voice for children forgotten after fame. Now, at 34 years old, Meline Sweden still works in the industry, but on her own terms, acting independently, writing scripts, producing, and speaking out constantly on mental health. Her estimated net worth is $5 million, partly from old glory, and the rest from the courage of someone who once stood at the edge of a cliff and chose not to fall. Monica Horan as Amy McDougal. When Amy McDougal walked into the Barone household with her gentle eyes and soft voice, viewers instantly knew. Robert had finally met the kindest woman of his life. But what about Monica Horan, the actress behind Amy? In 1996, she was 34 years old, and the 66th career milestone, it was also a test. Born on January 29, 1963, Monica Horan studied acting at Hofstra University. But destiny truly arrived when she married Philip Rosenthal, producer of Everybody Loves Raymond. Amy, whispers began, was or favoritism. Working under her husband on one sitcoms was a double-edged sword. Monica once admitted, performing for the audience or trying not to disappoint her husband. Every on screen was a quiet test of their real-life relationship. Them home, and at times, Monica her, but simply to protect a marriage. After Raymond ended, Monica didn't chase. She stepped back into the shadows, choosing to be a mother, a partner, charitable projects. Her rare appearances were or at events where she spoke candidly about marriage, art, and walking the fine line between two worlds that often clash. In 2025, at age 62, Monica Horan lives in Los Angeles, working quietly, occasionally joining her husband on small creative endeavors. Her estimated net worth is $10 million, not just from acting, but from a life spent choosing to step back, in order to protect something more important than fame, a love that never let the spotlight blind it. Love, laughter, and then loss. Everybody loves. Raymond left behind more than just cheap laughs. Behind every character was a person who once felt lonely, once fell apart, and sometimes vanished too soon. Do you remember them? Leave a comment below. Which of their stories touched you the most? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to uncover more heartbreaking truths behind shows we thought were all smiles.